Okay, we're going to test this beast out and see if that was the right one.
Testing.
I think that's the wrong microphone, actually.
Testing.
Okay, just checking. Oh, I hope it's plugged in and all that jazz.
Yeah, what if it's not?
Hey guys, have you thought about making your own podcast, but you're not really sure where to start? That's how I was at first, and really the only choice that stood out to me was Anchor. And let me tell you why. It was completely free to start, and it has all the tools that allow me to record and edit my podcast right from my phone or computer. And they distribute the podcast for me, so it's heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many other platforms. There's no minimum listenership, and you can start making money from day one. And really everything you need to make your podcast is all in one place. I love it, and I know you will too. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hopefully, since you stumbled across this podcast, you understand that I might be talking about topics that are a little bit sensitive for some people and can be a little bit triggering at times for other people. So if you are one of those people that have a tendency to feel that way, please keep that in mind while listening to this podcast. Hi everybody, welcome back to the Sinister Story Hour with Steph and my friend.
Welcome back, everybody.
So I have big news. We have big news. We have a TikTok. What is our TikTok?
Sinister Story Hour.
Sinister Story Hour. So find us on there. We shall post some stuff on TikTok one of these days, as soon as I figure out how to post stuff on TikTok.
TikTok famous, here we come.
Here we come, everybody. So, also you can still reach us at sinisterstoryhour@gmail.com or find us on Instagram, Sinister Story Hour. Okay, that's all.
Sounds good.
Okay, so as we know, it's prom season.
Prom
right?
season's over now. But...
Well, prom season's over here for now, but actually some areas are just going into prom season. Because I think that some areas actually have their proms in like May-ish or something. I don't know. I feel like that's true. But I have a couple of prom statistics and what prom actually, how it even started, because I never even knew how it started. But apparently proms date back clear back to the 1900s, and they started as just a simple social gathering, mostly in colleges. And students would all get in their Sunday best, and they would go to a formal dance. And even in the 50s, like it started to spread to high schools, so that kind of became the tradition of them finding their fanciest clothes, their Sunday best, and going and having a dance. So now it's become quite the big extravaganza between the tuxes and the limos and the dresses and the corsages and boutonnieres and everything else. It's a lot of money. So I was looking it up, and actually the average person spends about $1,000 on prom, the average family. So
yeah, that's not cheap.
It's quite spendy for a one night, and really not even a one night deal. It was
like what? 2 hour?
2 hour event and you're done. So yeah. So in the 50s was when corsages and the whole king and queen became part of what prom is. And girls, it said, typically begin 11 weeks before prom to shop for dresses, and they try on an average of 10 dresses for prom. So it's kind of a big deal. And out of like all of the girls that were questioned, they said that 15% saw prom equally as important as their wedding. A bunch of girls just really take it serious, that it's a big deal and they got to have the perfect experience. So tonight we're going to talk about somebody who did not have a perfect experience, and their family didn't exactly have the perfect experience.
You know, out of like all of your podcasts, I'm assuming that somebody got murdered on prom night.
Somebody got murdered on prom night, yeah. That's actually a really good guess, and judging from what we talk about on this show, I think that is definitely
fair to say.
Fair to say. There are a lot of deaths on prom night, sadly enough. In 2010, I looked it up, and it said 300 teens died in alcohol-related crashes during prom weekend. So the drinking and driving and the debauchery that goes on prom night is definitely common and can be fatal. And actually, sadly enough, it said that 1/3 of alcohol-related teen traffic fatalities actually occur between April and June. And so those months of like the getting out of school, summer starting, definitely can lead to some sadness.
Not surprising, though.
Yeah, it's not surprising at all, actually, when you think about it. So be safe driving, teenagers.
Don't drink and drive.
Do not do it. Okay, so as we're going into our story tonight, this happened in 1989 in Lakeville, Indiana. We've got a 17-year-old boy, your normal 17-year-old, right? He lives in Indiana. He attends LaVille High School, and he is the son of Robert Pelley, who was a local minister. So we got the pastor's son. Mm-hmm. He's got to be a good kid, right? His name's Jeff, and he's living with his dad, his stepmom, and his sister. And it's weird because they all have J names, but it's one of them is actually a sister, and I think it's Jackie. It's spelled a little bit different, but I think it's Jackie, and his stepsisters, Jolene, Jessica, and Janelle. So they knew they were destined for each other when they all had kids that started with J, apparently. So his mother had died of cancer in 1985. His dad had remarried less than a year later. So that might cause a little bit of strife, but it seemed like her bringing the 3 daughters into the equation wasn't a huge deal at first. But her daughters were 10, 8, and 6. And so he was a lot older than them at the time. He was like 15 at the time, or 13, I guess. So he was a little bit older and maybe not really into playing with little kids.
Yep.
So there did actually grow to be a little bit of tension in the home between Jeff and his 14-year-old sister Jackie and their new stepmother. So what happens a lot of the time in mixed families is that you get one family that's been raised one way and the other family that's being raised the other way, and they don't agree. Right. And so their stepmom's kids were being raised a little bit differently than they were raised, and they didn't like it. So normal family stuff, right? When you blend a family together, I feel like it's pretty normal to have that. So Jeff's father, Bob, had previously lived in Florida. He'd been working at a bank, and the bank had known ties to huge drug dealers. And so they thought maybe like that wasn't the really greatest place to be. And he had been the IT director at the bank. And they claimed that one time he was called into the bank at midnight, and following an audit, they discovered that there was $1 million missing. And so he actually worked with them to help track down the person that was responsible. He had actually been grounded a few weeks before that. He was caught stealing some CDs and some money from somebody's house. And so that's why his dad was so mad at him and had grounded him. So it was a pretty logical punishment for...
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Darla's mom is really surprised that he's going. And he actually comments to Darla's mom that, yeah, I have a 2-day pass from Pelley prison. So he thinks of his house as a prison, which, being a minister's son, I imagine it was a pretty strict home. And it does seem like they were butting heads a lot. And so it probably did feel a lot like a prison to him at times. But that was his idea of home life, was the Pelley prison. So then they all head off to the theme park, and they're having a great time. Reportedly, while they're at the theme park, though, his behavior changes. And so he suddenly starts to tell Darla that he's got a really bad feeling and he feels like something's wrong. So I wonder why. I wonder why he has a really bad feeling about what's going on at home all of a sudden, when he's been happy up until now and they're at the amusement park, and all of a sudden, so he might be right. So on Sunday, by about 9:30 in the morning, the Pelley family hadn't shown up for church yet. Remember, he's the minister. He lives in the parsonage that's right next door to the church. And so they go to his house and they knock on the door. And of course, there's no answer again. The blinds are still closed. Nobody can see in. And they find the spare key and they go in and they discover this horrible scene. Robert Pelley, who was 38 years old, he's a young dad.
He's not that old.
38. Yeah. He is actually dead in the upstairs hallway. He had been shot once in the chest and once in the neck. So they call the ambulance, and once they arrive, the bodies of all of the other family members are actually discovered as well. The stepmom, Dawn, had been shot in the temple, Janelle in the forehead, Jolene just under her right eye, and it was determined that it was done with the same shotgun.
Oh my goodness. How would the neighbors not hear the shots?
I wondered that too. I don't know if maybe the neighbors weren't there or something was going on that day that they wouldn't have heard. And it was weird that he drew the blinds and locked the door and kind of made it so nobody could go in and discover it without them having the key. There's no sign of any forced entry or robbery. The only thing that's missing is a shotgun that's belonging to Bob. And it's a 20 gauge pump action shotgun. And they determined that to actually be the same gun that's used in the murders. Now, one thing that always stands out to me is if you're going to kill somebody, don't use their own weapons, because that just looks bad, right? I mean, why would you, if you had the intent to kill somebody, go to their house and not take the weapon? So Jeff Pelley, a 17-year-old high school senior, is the leading suspect right from the beginning, right? But he's not arrested or charged. I mean, he's 17 years old. They don't really have sufficient evidence. They have the fact that, yes, the gun was Bob's, but it could have been a murder-suicide. They might have thought, there were other reasons that it could have happened. But they also had a theory that he had moved from Florida because of the bank position, and he was dealing with some dangerous people. He had gotten people in trouble, and so maybe there was that connection.
Yeah.
And so who knows? But at the time, he had kind of developed this new life in Indiana, and people were really respecting him. They loved him. And so he was very, very well liked in Indiana, that nobody else was going to hurt him unless it was somebody from his past, maybe. So 13 years actually go by, and Jeff Pelley goes on to live his life. I mean, he's now 30 years old at this point. So he's married. He has his own life. A cold case squad actually reopens the investigation, and he is arrested in August of 2002. So it was a long time that it took, 13 years for that for him to be charged with it. So he's then charged with the 4 murders. In July 2006, he goes on trial, which was crazy to me that it took 4 years for the trial to actually happen. I think in our minds, we feel like somebody gets arrested and the next week they go on trial. Yeah. And that's just not how it works. So the evidence was really circumstantial. Of course, they don't have a whole lot of DNA. It was 1989. They didn't collect a whole lot to actually test in 2002. They didn't have fingerprints that were linking Pelley to the crime. Really, the only thing that they have is the fact that they know it was Bob's 20 gauge shotgun that committed the crimes, but they didn't find the shotgun.
Yeah.
And so they never actually recovered it to get fingerprints. Having worked at a bank before, I can't even understand how that happens, that just $1 million accidentally disappears. But this was 1989, or before then, so life was different, I guess. And banks were run a little bit different. But he works with them to help track down this person. And surprisingly enough, it's not long after that he's thinking they better get the heck out of there. So they move clear over to Lakeville, Indiana. He becomes a minister. So from bank guy IT director that works with drug dealers to minister. What else do you want, right?
Yep.
So during the month of April 1989, Jeff has plans to attend prom with his lovely girlfriend, Darla. So he gets grounded right before prom, and his dad tells him that he's not allowed to go to prom. He's not allowed to drive the prized family Ford Mustang. He's not going to any of the activities. And they actually had a class activity that was planned